have a hand.
So you're in.
I'm like, they're gonna trip over all our crap before they get to
Yeah, I guess.
No, you can stay for Sunday school if you want. But I know you got,
She gets something.
we might pass across later
Our
today.
paths will cross,
Yeah.
yes.
For those that are online, Buzz is going to be back there monitoring if you make any comments or chat or whatever, we'll get questions asked and or answered. We will do that as we go through. Yeah, I know, I gotta have a snack. We're gonna. Does anybody get the paper?
Go on.
You mean the Tennessean?
Yes.
I hand this.
Yeah, I know. And I was, did she tell you?
No.
Oh. No, no.
Are you in it?
Yeah.
Oh, I was just kidding, really?
Well, I was gonna buy a paper to bring this morning, and my mind just hasn't been right for the last 4 days. Yeah, I did an op-ed on should the Ten Commandments be in the schools. So I welcome your thoughts on that. I'll send it out. I got a video that'll come out probably this coming week. But as we were talking, about controversial things, and last week, for some reason, we got on the topic of the Ten Commandments. And maybe that's why it got running this Sunday instead of last Sunday, because a week ago Thursday, I didn't check messages on my phone downstairs, and it was the editor person for the Tennessee and wanted to make sure this was my article before he puts my name and stuff. They may put my picture in there, I don't know. But I sent a picture too, they asked. But so that's why I didn't get in last week, so maybe God did that so it could come out today and we can have this discussion today about the Ten Commandments. When were the Ten Commandments given?
It was after they left Egypt, right?
And that is very important. That is very important. It's after God had freed them, out of the bondage and slavery in Egypt. They're on Mount Sinai and, the whole tablet thing. So it's really important to remember that the gospel is always first. It's, freedom from slavery and then the law. Grace before the law. And as we believe, the law is grace because the law is love, and we'll talk about that. So, yeah, when it was given is very important. And where? On a mountain, being with God, all that. Do you know what the original intent for the Ten Commandments were? This is what I've learned from Jewish scholars.
I mean, I don't know their intent, but I have a reason I believe it was done the way it was.
Okay.
I mean, they were freed from slavery. They were living under other rules that were not really God's rules.
Right.
And so it was a way to provide them a structure under which to live, to create a sense of order in their
Yes, it is. I finally put my mic on, so.
Foundation.
Okay, a lot of people believe that one of the main purposes of the law is to be a foundation, to give a sense of order for community, and that is very important. But from what I've learned from New Testament professor at Vanderbilt, Amy Jill Levin, a rabbi, Jewish rabbi, the law was given to build a faith community based on love. And if you look at, depending on how you count them, the first 3 or 4 are all about our relationship and loving with God. And the last 5 or 6 or 6 or 7, is how our relationships with each other. And Martin Luther, when he does, most of y'all went through confirmation class, we are to fear, you shall not murder. What does this mean? We are to fear and love God, so we neither endanger nor harm the lives of our neighbor, but instead help and support them in all life's needs. And when you help and support people, and he does that for all the commandments. When you're doing that, you're what? You're showing love and care. You're building a community based on trust, love, yeah. But it is important to have, that moral compass, so to speak, to not do this and not do that. Because when we do that and whatever, what happens? We don't love. And we end up in slavery, right? In bondage, like back in Egypt, right? So what are y'all's thoughts about the 10 Commandments? I want to read something and that's a part of the 10 Commandments. That it can sound a little disconcerting. It's hard to flavor. You shall not bow down to, talking about idols, or worship them, for I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God. Ever thought of God being jealous? What connotations do we have of jealousy? Is it a good thing, a bad thing?
Does that translate to a different word?
I don't know.
No.
I'm just going by what's written here. I'm not a Hebrew scholar. But that, it'd be good to find out what that is. But is jealous a good thing or a bad thing in general?
I think usually
bad.
bad.
Yeah.
Most people think it's bad. I can see the good sort of side to it.
You know,
Kind of get it.
don't get mad at me.
Why are you looking at me?
I'm going to tell a story. I don't know if I want to tell the story now.
Well, if you're questioning it, you probably should not.
When we were dating, I lived in Birmingham. She was at Auburn. And she was going to go with her girlfriends to go down to the beach somewhere for a weekend. Oh, I was going to come. I wanted to spend time with you. I was jealous. But I wanted to, you know what they're going to do. They'll go down there and drink and get in trouble. And so anyway, so I don't know, maybe it can be a good thing. But anyway, that's not what I want to get to. But when I read that, it just kind of struck me.
I mean,
Jealousy
I
makes
thought-
you do.
What jealousy makes you do.
It's
You know-
driving what's.
And act in love. Jealousy can make us act in love. That I want
Or
the
it's
very
a
best for.
response to an insecurity of yourself.
Yeah,
That you think is about the other person, but it's actually serving.
it's serving me. In that case, it was serving me.
I mean, I think if you're looking at it from a romantic perspective,
Yeah.
it's pretty much always gonna be like, you have triggered something insecure in me, and now it's about me.
Yeah.
Even if you lie to yourself and say, but I love her so much, or I love you so much that I need to be with you. Sorry, I'm not trying to call you out.
Yeah, I know. I'm going to get on the couch here in a minute. For probably the next few nights, actually.
No, that sounds
No,
like.
but this is like, but it's God that I'm a jealous God. So I'm going to take that as a very positive thing, that He loves us so much, He wants the best for us.
So here's the gospel according to Bugs Bunny.
There we go.
There's a wonderful one where you see that, I don't know what he was, the abdominal snowman.
Yeah.
And he says, I'm going to hug you and hold you and squeeze you and keep you for my very, very own.
Oh, Lord, I see
And I
that.
will call you George.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I feel God,
Yeah.
jealous is.
And that's how
I'm keeping you for my very, very own.
But I
Right.
can see the positive spin to it there. I mean, when you come at it from a God of love, he's jealous, and it's not like a jealous in a bad way. It's more like you're worshiping things that don't care for
Right.
you. They don't
And aren't
respond to love.
helping you.
Right, that's where I see that.
And he's already proved his love for them, but he wants to show that love more, kind of go on the theme of the day, by giving this law, to love them more, so to love God and to love each other. But it goes on to say, this can be interesting. For I'm a jealous God, punishing children for the iniquity of their parents to the third and fourth generation of those who reject me. Wow, that sounds a little judgmental, doesn't
Yeah,
it?
but what's Bible say?
Yeah, well, we're not gonna, we're gonna continue that. But why would God say that? And you have to, again, we have to go back however many thousand years ago it was at the time of Moses how many of y'all have your entire family living in Nashville?
I mean, do you count surrounding areas?
It's depending on, no.
In Nashville proper, no. In Murfreesboro and
Well, see, yeah, no,
surrounding areas,
no.
yes.
No. I mean, I haven't lived with, my family is spread out everywhere. Back in the day, at the time of Moses, when they're, got there's thousands of people, whatever, you would have 3 or 4 generations living together. When I grew up, my grandparents were there, obviously my parents, my aunts and uncles, cousins, we were all pretty much right there. We were all together, okay? Punishing children for the iniquity of parents. Who's, probably even today, sadly, but 50, 60 years ago and 3,000 years ago, who was the head of the family?
The fathers.
The father. What the father said, you did. There was really no question, right? So with the iniquity of the parents, and I like how he put parents here. He didn't say fathers. He's I just caught that, maybe for the first time. Iniquity of the parents, that it's not just the father, it's the mother and father together. I'll get to you in a minute. What happens if the parents, don't follow the law? What's going to happen?
That's why it's the whole family.
It's going to mess up the whole family. You're going to be enslaved again, right? So, so again, it's punishing to the third and fourth generation of those who reject him. All the generations are living together. And if you're going to lie, cheat, and steal and all that stuff, you're not going to have a loving, so you're going to be punished. Absolutely. But always remember, at least from our understanding, God is not the punisher. At least not directly. And I always say maybe indirectly because God lets us make that choice, to make the wrong choice. But we cause that, again, of the parents to the third and fourth generation because everybody in that family is going to follow what dad says. And it's not going to be good. Now the good news is, but showing steadfast love to the 1,000th generation of those who love me and keep my commands. That's like, well, you wanted to talk to that a minute.
I'm saying that part is so much bigger than the former.
It is so much bigger.
Yeah.
The 153 fish were all the same size. Sin is so small and God's love is so large. It's so much greater than we can ever understand. So that's a little background, then going into, don't, use God's name in vain. What does that mean? What does that mean? You had a hand up a minute ago, did I?
Oh, I just wanted to clarify, was that word inequity?
That's what it said.
What is iniquity? Or like inequity, like things not being equal?
Inequity, like bad,
Oh, not things not, like, as opposed to not being equal.
like sin.
Well, there's inequity and the iniquity.
That's iniquity.
This is iniquity.
Yeah.
What is
Yeah.
that word? What is that?
You said inequity.
Did I,
Spell it.
yeah, Iniquite.
That's
Iniquity. Iniquity, sin.
What does that mean?
Sin, basically, right?
Immoral or a grossly unfair behavior.
right, yeah, yeah. What was my question? I was.
Lord's
Oh,
name in vain.
yeah, what's the first thing that comes to mind when it says, don't use God's name in vain?
Curse words, like,
Don't say GD this, right?
right.
It's not what that means. Don't use God for your purposes. Now, we shouldn't say, I almost said it. And I've had pastors say that, and I said, wow, how the hell can you say that? But that's not what it is.
Because you are using God for your purposes at that point.
You are using God.
Trying to call down
Yeah.
wrath upon that person.
Yeah, yeah. Why do Jesus asked someone to try to, good teacher, solve this problem for me, or why do you call me good? Don't use God's name for your selfish purposes. It's more what that means.
Is that like, don't call somebody out in the name of God, like,
Right,
you're cheating on your wife and God wouldn't like that type
Yeah.
of thing, to say I'm better than you?
right. Yeah, yeah. God, is going to condemn you because of your sexuality. God's going to condemn you because of whatever. You're using God's name in vain because if we believe, as we do believe, and when you read in the Bible, if, yeah, that is, and I do know this, it can also be translated since. Okay, and there's a huge difference between if and since, right? But God's name, Yahweh, is breath. Yahweh. So every breath we take, we're breathing in, breathing out God. And to not use that name in vain, again, yeah, don't do the GD thing or the JC thing. And boy, as a kid, I owned those words because I didn't know any better. They were cool because, oh, my friends did it. But don't use God to further your own ambition or your own prejudices or whatever. So the big question, we don't need to go through all those commandments unless you want to. So the big question is, our illustrious state legislature wants to put the Ten Commandments in all the schools. What do you think? Yes or no?
No. Just sharing my experience, when I was a kid, in North Carolina, I remember one teacher had like a little, plastic loaf of bread, and every day one kid came up and pulled a little card out of it, read a Bible verse. My high school homeroom teacher was a preacher's wife, so we stood up every day and said the Lord's Prayer. And even as a kid, I thought, well, if you don't go to church, you don't know what any of that means, or you're just getting, you might as well got up and recited Beatles lyrics or something. It's kind of this rote thing. And I know at the Y, there are Bible verses up all over the place. And I wonder, does anybody look at those? I mean, does that make any difference in people's lives? So it's like putting something on a wall, to me, is like the easy part. It like makes you feel like, yep, we're doing God's work. We put these words up on the wall. But, transgender kids or, but then there's all this
Muslim,
then there's all this
atheists.
other stuff that the legislature does or doesn't do, that it just is kind of, they don't want to put the Sermon on the Mount. The Ten Commandments we have always seemed to be,
Not this, oh yeah.
We
The
look-
Beatitudes.
we look at the Ten Commandments, they're almost like punitive. There's not,
Right.
there's no love in those, but they're really punitive.
You want to hear what my article says?
I'm just curious, is it the point of like, are they trying to inspire a moral high ground for young children? Or are they trying to create moral compasses for children? Or are they trying to inflict
They're trying to
Christian
impose their
religion?
view of Christianity.
Right.
Here's what I wrote.
Roberts, I'm the pastor of St. John's Lutheran Church in the Donaldson community of Nashville. I recently saw that Tennessee supermajority legislature is trying to mandate the displaying of the Ten Commandments in our public schools. As a pastor, I am against this requirement because I believe that God's original intent in giving the Ten Commandments was and still is to build a community based on all-inclusive love, loving God the first part of the commandments and loving everyone else the second. Yet it seems that many in the Christian community, including many of our elected leaders that claim the Christian faith, do not know God's intent in giving his people the Ten Commandments. Unfortunately,
You think I'm being a little judgmental there as I hear that?
What is the truth?
I mean, yeah, what you just said.
Yeah.
it seems to me that many Christians have watered down God's purpose of love in the law to just be a set of guidelines for life. While I believe the Ten Commandments are good and important as guidelines for living, I see too many Christians using the commandments, a large part of God's law of love, to demean, attack, and condemn people. They are not using God's law as it was meant to be, a call for believers to be all loving, caring, and accepting, as many believe God desires. In addition, as a Christian pastor, I fully believe in the separation of church and state. We cannot say we support religious freedom while prioritizing our own religion in public spaces. While we know that many Tennesseans are guided by their faith, we are also a diverse state where our communities practice a variety of faiths or no faith at all. Placing the Ten Commandments in our schools sends the message to our children that one religion matters more than all others, while violating the religious freedom of all Tennessee children and their families. I find it especially upsetting that our supermajority legislature would promote the Ten Commandments while our state leadership fails to be guided by God's law of love found in the Ten Commandments and fulfilled by Jesus Christ, so all children, regardless of their race, color, religion, sexual identity, and so on, are fed in all aspects of their lives. It is my prayer that instead of trying to post the Ten Commandments in classrooms, our state would instead prioritize the love of Jesus by accepting and affirming our children for who they are as God created them to be and where they are safe from gun violence. For in that way, our leaders would truly be living out the law of love found in the Ten Commandments, and most importantly, laws Jesus himself preached, lived, and called his followers to do, to love God and to love all children.
Good job.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I
for
think
doing
it's okay to make a point and stand on your point. Like you were asking, do I
Yeah.
sound judgmental? You're delivering your opinion, and it was
Right.
asked. You know, like it's okay to make a point. I think that
Yeah, and that's
perspective
the point.
is lacking in this state, and it's really nice to hear it. So
Well, you know, if, and I was just told, never mind. Someone said, ran into someone that used to be a member here and they're not coming here because we're too political. And,
politics are so ingrained in everything.
well,
we do
Jesus was
now.
kind of political.
Yeah, he was. Oh, yeah, he was.
You know, I mean, but anyway.
And other churches aren't.
And other churches aren't. I mean, I know
But you're not
churches that will
telling us
say,
what to
I'm not gonna
believe.
tell you who to vote, but they're sitting right here. Okay, so they are.
But you're not telling us who
No.
to vote for or what to believe.
And if they were following what the Ten Commandments were all about, they wouldn't turn down millions of dollars to feed kids at hunger over the summertime or throughout the year. You know, they would do something about gun violence, and they would do something about, you know, sexual identity. I mean,
Schools are using.
the next thing I'm gonna do is pro-life.
The schools that have precious little budgetary funds to start with, and Tulip Grove is one of them,
Yeah.
they prioritize feeding the kids lunch as part of their individual school budget.
Mm.
That was them. That wasn't the state, that
Right.
wasn't the federal government.
Okay.
We were heavily Title I school. And that they chose, instead of having another vice principal, full-time vice principal, they chose
Wow.
to take on and feed all of those kids, every single one of them.
Really?
Every day, twice a day. Yes.
Wow. Is that the principal still that you were there?
Yes,
Okay. Allison, yeah.
yes. So.
Wow.
No, you are dead on. My issue with them putting the Ten Commandments in school, if you're gonna do those, you better start posting everything else, and that includes Satanism, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, I
Were
mean,
they in there when I was little in school? Cause I don't remember.
They weren't when I was.
I remember doing the pledges, so I don't remember.
Yeah, I
They
remember
weren't when I
people
was-
praying too,
'Cause I
and I
can't
didn't think
remember
anything
that
about
far
it. I didn't
back.
think this was a good thing or a bad thing. So little kids are probably not gonna pay that much attention anyway.
Yeah.
So whatever they're trying to do, I feel like it's probably
And
way
has
too.
anybody really ever been converted
No.
just by reading the Ten Commandments?
No. You know, and I think more people are deconverted because of what people do with the Ten Commandments.
And then I
You know.
think the other piece of that puzzle is, you talk about it being a Christian agenda and that's what they're doing, but these are Old Testament things, so they would theoretically belong in the Jewish heritage. So, you know, you're saying, does it promote Christian?
Right.
No, I mean, it promotes some perhaps values that precede.
But they're not doing that either.
No, they're not.
You know, because they don't know, they have their agenda to, you know, we don't want to get into their agenda. I mean, they're changing everything of what kids, you know, should be teaching. Yes, Natalie?
Nashville has more Christian schools like than any area I've ever seen. So I don't really understand it. It's like there's so.
You know, sometimes I
if
have a
they
problem
want-
with that.
I'm just like they act like Nashville has a problem of people not being in public schools because so many are in Christian schools, private
Yeah.
schools, charter schools. So I don't really understand if they think that there's not enough Christianity here. There's a lot of it, and it's
Yeah.
I don't know. They're just I guess they want it to just infiltrate in every single area. But let me tell you what, working in a public school, kids can barely read. Like
Right.
we have, you know, kids who are in 5th grade are barely reading.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, not all of them. Many of them are doing great, but there is. I mean, I would be surprised if like less than half of those kids even have a lot of books at home. Like, if they're just going in their classroom and they're reading the Ten Commandments, I mean, it's hard for an adult to interpret, let alone a child who's barely literate.
Yeah.
So I just don't think that they are even close to thinking they're gonna make some kind of amazing Christian impact like they think they will.
How will they explain adultery? The second grader.
We can't talk about that.
Teachers have enough. Teachers are having
Before I
enough. They don't
forget,
need
if
to define
there's-
adultery.
If there's anybody online with a chat or comment, just feel free to join the conversation.
Seems
That's a
like
banned
it's about
topic.
excluding others,
It's on
not,
the wall.
I
not
know.
including, but excluding
Right.
other people.
Right, you know, and do we have all the right answers? No. We have a really good answer.
I'm going to help set up for Lillian's.
Oh, okay, cool.
I think that one of the reasons that Martin Luther gave us the small catechism was teach this in your home,
Right, right.
you know, and then show those values that you've learned in your home out in the real world.
And he wrote a large catechism so pastors know what they're doing so they can continue to teach it. Now, read the preface of the large catechism because it basically, you know, you can have lazy pastors not teaching.
I agree with
But you're right.
everything that you said, and I think part of what, like I said, my middle schooler is gonna ignore it anyway. Like, he's not gonna care if it's on the wall, he's not gonna read it, and that and most of the kids aren't. But I think what bothers me is it's there to be spiteful, because it's another way of showing, I'm going to impose my religion on
Right.
you and take away your rights, like we did to the native tribes, and so on and so on. So what my problem is the people who want to enforce that, are you living under these laws? Because you're not, you're stealing. You're stealing people's identities, you're stealing people, to say that you want to erase transgender. What does that word mean, to wipe out? That's a hate crime, that is a murder. And, you know, I have a transgender person in our family who's a loving, loving person, and her
Yeah.
good friend killed herself because of how scared she is in this society and how she's so not welcome. And it's horrible. So don't be a hypocrite. I can't stand hypocrites. You're gonna put them on there, then you live by them, and you are exactly.
But they don't
right.
know what to live by.
They don't know
They
what to
don't
live
know what
by.
they mean. You can't live by
Right,
them.
so why don't you put up with the amendments of everybody's created equal, all means all? How about doing that? Define all. You know, that means transgender, that means people of color, that means women. We have rights. And how about that in a public school? Religion doesn't belong in the public. It doesn't belong in politics. And you want to say that some people say we're too political? Well, this is our life. We're talking about caring about other people, and that, unfortunately, their rights are being taken away in politics. So we have to be a part of that. We have to stand up for the people who can't stand up for themselves.
There are other churches out there telling people to go vote for Trump when this election was coming
Oh,
up.
yeah.
Literally outright said it. I mean, you don't even do that. You
You're not
just talk
supposed to,
about-
because you can supposedly lose your, your
Well,
tax
that church
exempt thing.
probably, they gave away their whatever nonprofit.
Well, yeah, but,
Church.
of course,
Church and the
you mentioned there's a lot of Christian schools around here. And sometimes I wonder if they're any better.
Nope, I can verify that
Because-
100%.
I mean, I remember walking in confirmation class 15 years ago, and I won't tell you the person's name. Pastor, am I going to hell because I'm not baptized in
Oh, I know
that
who you're
church?
talking about, probably.
Oh, you don't know who the girl is.
Oh, okay, this was a boy, because this happened to my nephew. My daughter and my nephew, Joaquin and Shay's son and my daughter, both went to Davidson Academy from K-3 to graduation. And they tried to kick my daughter out for being gay.
Different school.
Okay, they tried to kick her out for being gay, and so she just lied and said, I'm gay. And the football
Isn't that-
coach told Josh he was going to hell because he wasn't baptized later.
See, I got
And I love the
problems.
school as far as the education, but some of the stuff that, well, it's actually kind of funny, because like, I feel like a third of my daughter's class came out gay, and I'm like, y'all made them gay.
And they're probably happier.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so, do they expect teachers to be pastors now as well? Because teachers. Like,
Oh my
have to-
gosh.
I mean, just think about the teacher in the classroom. What if that teacher is not Christian, and now they have to, like, just imagine a second grader walking over there and saying, "What does that
Just
mean?
mean.
What does that mean?" Like, somebody mentioned adultery. I mean, come on, it's just so ridiculous. Like, teachers are doing enough. They're buying things for their classroom. They're buying, like, everything. And
You
then,
need to get all your teachers to do action teams.
and before they even, like, before they had a role, like, I'm in the school as the resource person, but before that, like, teachers were literally doing everything, including feeding a lot of their kids,
Right.
and providing Christmas gifts for them, and, like, going to homes and putting trees up in their houses. I mean, they really were doing a lot.
Wow.
That's something that, like, teachers are servants of the heart in their own ways. You know?
Live this
And-
one.
She just
And-
raised it, sorry.
And now what do they expect? They want teachers to also talk about what adultery means, or what honor thy father and mother is. Well, how many kids in that school don't have two parents?
And how many have abusive parents?
How many have
And
one's
so you have to,
incarcerated?
do what your parents say.
Did you just realize they're violating their own law, putting the Ten Commandments in schools?
Yeah.
What, and they don't, and like,
I know.
Literally.
I know,
this,
I know. It's,
I mean, adultery. That's literally one of the, you can't talk about that conversations. That literally violates the laws they recently created in the last 2 years. They're violating their own law.
They're missing the mark. They're missing the mark of everything, like you said. What about?
that's
their
what sin
safety?
does. That's the third purpose of the law, is to show how sinful we are. Well, no, that's the
Make sure the
second
kids are
purpose.
safe, make sure they're fed, make sure they have gloves and hats.
Yeah.
But you wanna impose on making sure they know the 10 Commandments?
That's gonna feed them and keep them warm.
it's very performative, really. I mean, it's just like a joke.
It's one more step in
What grade
establishing a set of litmus tests to who can be a teacher.
Can't hear you.
If you don't believe in this, that we're requiring you to post, that's a reason we can say you can't be a teacher.
Oh, boy, I hadn't thought about that. you know, you have to have a litmus test before you can be a teacher. You have to
So that's,
know
They're getting
what,
good teachers now they're gonna put
Yeah.
tests.
they can make them,
Oh, that'll be
Bible
fun.
scholars, which they're not gonna be because they're just gonna be told this is what it means. And
Right.
What's kind of ironic is that Americans in general are down low compared to Europeans and Asians in terms of religious literacy, knowing about religions or and specifically their own. In a Japanese high schooler would run circles around an American high schooler in terms of being able to tell them about Christianity, because they study that in school, they study about it. Now that's different from saying teaching it, they're teaching about it. Most of them wouldn't want to even step into a church per se, but they know what Christianity is about. The Ten Commandments is part of a cultural tradition that's important to Europe and the US, but that's not the way it's being treated, which is really bad, because you're not allowing people to learn how that cultural tradition affected things by using it like we've talked before. The other thing I think is ironic is the Holy Spirit in Hebrew is feminine and Greek neutral. In Latin, it's male. Does that make the Holy Spirit transgender? Does it make God bisexual? I mean, it's
It's asexual.
pansexual.
oh, bisexual. You've got the Father, which
And
is male,
and-
masculine, and you've got the
Right.
Spirit, which is feminine.
Feminine.
You know.
yeah,
God created man and woman in God's image.
Yeah.
Right.
You know.
Intersex.
that'll be the first week of Lent. The theme is gonna be always loved and never alone, you know, and God created us to be together. So, yeah,
Pastor, also, you know, I think I talked to you about this a little bit. In Romans, they talk about how we've died to the law through the body of Christ. And that you may belong to another, to him who has been raised from the dead, in order that we may bear fruit for God. While we were living in the flesh, our sinful passions, aroused by the law, were at work in our members to bear fruit for death. But now we are discharged from the law, dead to that which held us captive, so that we are slaves not under the old written code, but in the new life of the Spirit. So, we, you know, I take that from some other Bible studies that, I don't know, what is that
we're dead to our sins. They have been crucified, they have been killed, they have been left in the grave when Jesus walked out. And we've been raised, you know, to live the essence of the law. The essence of love is what I get out of that.
And I feel that, you know, not that, like you said, Jesus said, I'm not here to abolish the law, but he also said, kind of, like, you can't keep all 10, why don't I just give you this one to go by, you know what I mean? But also that I feel like, again, we're having trouble with the 10, just show, this is what Jesus has shown us, live the life of Jesus.
I'll argue that a little bit. We're not, see you, Natalie, thanks for staying.
Yes, thank you. Bye.
Jesus did not come to abolish the law, came to fulfill the law, not just one or two, you know, but he did say, you know, when he was asked, what is the greatest commandment? Love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, strength, and you love your neighbor as yourself. As combining all 10.
Right.
You know, there's nothing excluded. You know, it's loving, keeping them all.
Exactly.
You know,
And to follow the ways of Jesus.
and then, you know, and then as he ends the Gospels, you know, do what I did. Go therefore to all nations, baptizing Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, and teaching them all I commanded you. And there's one teaching that Jesus commanded us to do, and it's found in John 13. Love one another as I loved you. Bottom. Boom. That's it. You know, John doesn't even have the communion liturgy in his gospel. It's all about revealing God as a God of love, to believe in that God, and to do what he commanded us to do, to love everybody.
I would say that just like in Moses' day,
Mhm.
people knew that murder was wrong, that stealing was wrong, they were punished for all these things. The 10 Commandments may have that purpose of community that we don't stress today, that's our problem. People still know that murder's wrong, that stealing's
There's wrong,
wrong,
adultery is
that
wrong, and
lying's
coveting.
wrong,
and-
all these, we know all those things. Maybe because they're written in our heart, maybe because we were taught them from the moment we were born. I don't know why we know all of these things are wrong. But
Because we
have
were
to
born
grow
with
in our
original
faith,
love.
You know? I don't think you have to tell a kid. I know one child whose psychiatric diagnosis was has no inborn morals.
Hmm,
One child. That was the scariest thing you've ever done.
I bet.
He'd set fire to himself. He did not see that as wrong. He'd set fire to his house. He did not see this as
Yeah.
wrong. He ultimately took his life.
Yeah.
His mother was my dearest friend. She had everything she could try. He had none of that written
Yeah.
in his DNA. The rest of us have it, you know?
The
Well,
majority of us.
I wouldn't say the
Well,
rest, but, you know, there's more people like that, I'm sure.
I'm sure that they
Because
are.
we live in a broken world, and situations like that just happen.
But he would see those things and it wouldn't register.
Yeah.
None of that would say wrong. None of that
Yeah.
would say love. None of that would say do.
So why do we know that, and we still do it? I mean, that's the question.
You're talking about the law, you know, I can't ignore the fact that when Jesus turned over the tables at the temple, the people at the temple were, in quotation marks, obeying the law, but they had lost the purpose.
The purpose,
or
I mean,
the meaning of it. They were doing everything, checking it.
Sure.
Oh, your money's not clean, so we have to change that and all. But,
right,
and that, in my humble opinion, is always one of the big problems when talking about law, be it secular law or sacred law. People lose sight of what the law is to intend, and they get focused so much on the wording of the law and the details of it, not what it's supposed to be doing.
yeah.
AOC wrote a sermon for you. I posted it to your page.
I remember that.
It was real. She was like, y'all think you know Jesus. She's like, he'd be flipping out over all of you.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, that was succinctly put, but like she did. It was very, I clipped it up to my Facebook page, so if you're Facebook friends with me, you've seen it. I posted it to his, and you can disagree with her politically, but she nailed it on the head.
Right,
And I think it's interesting, we're talking about all of this, when she mentioned the kids not having books, and she's right. When we had that relationship with Two Rivers before the pandemic of the Reading Partner Program, I remember I wanted to sign up for that, and reading is something I'm good at just because the principal way back in the day thought it would be fun to politically stick it to my dad by sticking me in what was at that time called Chapter 1. So it was basically a very, very small, no more than like 5 kids to 1 teacher ratio, where you learn to read. And for the kids who were really struggling, it was a wonderful program. But the teacher was like, she doesn't have a problem reading, so why is she in my class? And my dad kind of explained it to her. She's like, she said, you know what? I don't get to work with kids like that much. I'm gonna take it for the gift it is. So she would always assign me different things. Came back to bite him in the butt later because I have the highest reading comprehension on the TCAP ever. But neither here nor there. So when I was asking my student, we went through all the introductory questions, and we were fiddling around for time, and she's like, well, I'll just keep talking. And I was like, okay. So I was like, so what do you like to read at home? She goes, I don't have books in my house. And I almost cried. I was like, my kids have like 500 books between the 3 of them. And that's a best estimate, and that might be wrong.
yeah,
All of them were part of the Imagination Library for 5
that's good,
whole
yeah.
years.
Mhm.
I mean, not including what we buy or what was given through
Sure.
Tulip Groves. We were getting ready to hit our Read Me Week, and we do bingo for books, and like every kid that attends that event, everybody, the whole goal is to leave at least 1 book, and usually we've got a whole nother stack of like 5 or 6 books. And so that was really hard. And I've been painted some pictures of some of the, Jessica's been, you know, you've seen a couple of her friends now here in church. And what I hear from them about what they talk to their parents at home, they don't. Their parents don't talk to them about politics, about the sex talk, you name it, they don't talk about it. These kids kind of hide from their parents because they're all questioning their identities.
Well, and the parents have completely, in those cases, abdicated their responsibility to
Agreed.
raise their children.
Agreed.
Right.
They've built it either, in one case, the mom is so reactionary to the child fakes feeling better than she is just so she doesn't freak out her mom. She was trying to decide when to leave our house last weekend, and I was like, well, you leave whenever you want to, sweetheart. I said, you're welcome here. And she's like, well, I don't want to be a burden, be another mouth to feed. I said, no, don't ever say burden. I said, we love having you here. I said, I will take you home whenever you want to go home. She's like, yeah, I really don't want to go home because they fight. I'm like, I don't want to be there. And I was like, well, you say when you're ready. I'll take you home when you're ready. And she ended up saying several hours later, which is fine. But you come to my house, we talk about it all. Politics, religion, whatever you want to talk about, whenever it's there. So I'll have conversations, but they don't get it. I can tell you they don't get it at home. It's wild.
And it is in our society that causes that to happen. Everybody's working so much, don't have the time, don't take the time, don't know how.
I don't know, I wasn't raised that way.
Yeah,
I take for granted that my dad from early ages was like, we talk about the candidates. One of the very first places we start, do they have a moral compass? Do their actions match their words?
yeah.
We don't care about the D or the R that sits behind their name. That says nothing about who they are.
Right.
Then you start to talk
Well-
about the issues. What's important to you? What are you voting on? My dad would literally take me. I can remember being 8 years old, and that was back when you had to push all the buttons in the booth. And we'd be like, who are we voting for? And he would let me push all the buttons in the booth.
Oh, wow.
So I can, early childhood, I mean, he would have me politically involved. It's literally ingrained into my very being from the age of 2.
Yeah, I think, I don't know where, you know, I grew up with a library in my home. I have a library in my home, especially a children's library for my grandkids, my children. I just love to read. And we did, when Susan Magaza was alive, she and I would gather all the books that people were getting rid of.
Oh,
and
yeah.
bring them to the Napier communities and things like that. I'm all about the books and everything. But you say that people in their homes, they're not talking about things. I mean, I grew up very sheltered. I was very naive. I was the only girl, and an Italian family, and Catholic. And but just recently, a childhood friend of mine and I were talking, and she goes, I gotta tell you, she goes, your family, your home growing up was a sanctuary to me. It was a safe place. And she goes, I model my home now as your mom did, you know, everybody's welcome here. And that just made me, you know, we didn't always talk about politics. I was a very impressionable kid. You know, we lived in a very small cottage, so if my mom was like watching a movie and went, oh my gosh, they killed the mother, now I can't sleep because I'm thinking, oh my God, somebody's mother died. You know, and I really took that in because then I was like, what would I do without my mother? So she sheltered me for a reason because I couldn't always handle it. But the fact that when that girl said that to me, she goes, I remember coming to your house, and it was pouring rain, and my mother opened the door and said, oh my gosh, Kelly, you're soaked to the bone, get it out, got her a towel and gave her a bowl of soup, and she goes, I will never in my life forget how comforting your family made me feel. And, you know, we didn't always talk about politics or anything. In fact, we didn't, because that was personal to my parents, but how that we felt loved, and how we felt cared for and safe. And that was enough. I could go to my parents with anything. They didn't always agree. They didn't always agree with John and I's decisions in our lives. I don't always agree with my children's. But it's okay. I still accept who they are, and my parents accepted who we were. And I think that's the difference, is that the kids need to feel loved, and
we're all kids.
we're all kids.
You know, we need to do, I think, a better job of helping our world know
Yeah.
exactly what you're saying. You know, people feel comfortable, that they feel loved, that they feel safe for,
Yeah.
you know, and there's not a lot of safe places. And I say that as it comes out of my mouth. I bet there are, just don't know them.
We go through this
We-
church,
we-
they feel that way, you
Yeah.
know?
Well, how many people don't feel that way about church? Heard a lot about that recently.
Yes, but I'm saying this church, we hope that our kids feel that way.
Well, you know, I think they do.
Yeah.
I think we do a good job with our kids. I think we do a pretty good job with each other.
I didn't feel that growing up. I was scared I was in trouble a lot at church, because I got the giggles, or, my friends and I would sit there and talk, and then we'd get yelled at the priest, and now you have to go up to him and get, kneel down, and, no, I hated every minute of it. It was not a comfortable, safe place for me.
My kids bring blankets and pillows and
Yeah,
sprawl out.
I saw that.
Yeah, a lot of churches will take a section right in the back and just put pads. You know, that's their nursery.
For the kids,
Yeah,
Yeah,
Some
seriously,
church let
it's,
the
we've
kids
been in
go.
some of those, they're really cool concepts, just to
yeah.
give them
Keeps
quiet,
everybody together.
quiet toys, and, I mean, that's like the de facto parent section over there anyway.
Yeah,
I don't know if you noticed, we pretty much all sit over there.
yeah. This has been fun, I guess.
Cathartic, I suppose.
Okay, yeah.
I'd like to just add one thing that struck me looking at the passage for today. Hold on. 6. Well, this is the Deuteronomy version of the Ten Commandments.
Oh, okay.
It's got a little line that says, "It was not with your fathers that the Lord made this covenant, but with us, the living." And of course, by now, everybody that had started out the Exodus has died except for, I think, about 3 people.
2, maybe, something.
Well,
Joshua and Caleb.
Joshua, Moses.
Well, Moses,
Yeah, I don't know if Aaron's still alive or not, I can't remember. I guess he's dead.
yeah. And Moses, we don't know for sure.
But the point is that it's even more important because it was not with your fathers that the Lord made this covenant, but with us, the living. Every one of us who is here today, which is the same thing that shows up in the word remembrance in the community liturgy. That it's, we are part of it today, it belongs to us. It's calling to us, not to our forebears, but it's for us to make our own.
Yeah, and it's not just as a lot of churches do this in remembrance of me. You know, it's more about remembering, bringing people together.
But remembering is different from remembrance. Remembrance, as I understand, comes from the practice of the Passover, where every generation is to see themselves as the one who came out of Egypt when they celebrate that. And I think that's what the remembrance means when we're talking about, when Jesus used those words.
Yeah, I think, again, we're talking about another part of my problem with this in the Ten Commandments is that the law was from Deuteronomy, which is the Torah, and it's the Jews, and, literally, growing up as a Catholic, I can't tell you how old I was before I realized Jesus was a Jew. We were not told that. And, so I don't think a lot of the Christians, you're not accepting of Jews, but yet you want the Ten Commandments of. So it's just so hypocritical, and that really bothers me.
Well, it's part of our
about the
history.
acceptance of it. Do this in remembrance of me. He was at a Passover meal, right? Being, the Last Supper was a Passover meal, right? So, again, if you're going to do something and put it up, understand it and know where it's coming from, and not put it up there to exclude people, and understand who Jesus was, who he ate with, and that,
Well, when I was a kid, we used to talk about Jesus of Palestine. We don't do that anymore.
Interesting, I've never heard
That's
that.
interesting.
Yeah.
Say that, Buzz.
I remember as a kid hearing Jesus referred to as Jesus of Palestine.
Yeah.
Did you go to, what, a Catholic?
No, I was a Methodist.
And so was it a religious school?
Oh, no.
Oh, just in church?
I just enjoy, I don't know.
Oh,
it just-
interesting, yeah,
Yeah.
interesting, but you're right, yeah.
Yeah.
So I just Googled the difference, or not rather Google, I'm trying to move away from Google, the Koja or whatever it's called. As the nouns, the difference between remembering and remembrance is that remembering is the act by which something is remembered,
Right.
while remembrance is the act of remembering, a holding in mind or bringing to mind recollection, which is actually the opposite of how I pictured those two. I was doing it as a verb, where remembering is a present participle of language, meaning we are actively doing it here
Right.
and now, as opposed to where I feel like remembrance is what was. But, are y'all
It's
done?
actually the reverse of that, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we got 30
Are we done?
minutes.
The kids are done.
Go back down there, we'll be
Wait,
down there.
Pastor, I just want to tell you, jealousy in the Bible is apprehensive of the loss of another's affection. When it was saying about unyielding as the grave, how does God define jealousy? So I just thought,
Depends on where you got that. I'll try to look up a Hebrew word for that and see. Try, keyword. Depending on how much snow we get on Wednesday, we probably won't be here Wednesday night. We'll just trust that it's going. We'll see. If it doesn't, we'll do something.
So
but-
what's the amount that stops Nashville? A half an inch?
Yeah,
I know.
yeah.
The word.
The word. The word that became snow. The concept of snow just shuts us down.
Yeah.
I know, sometimes Pastor, like, gives a text and I'm like, wait, what's going on? Why are we not?
So what about next week? We'll do the Ephesians?
Sure. That's a-
Let's get into controversial talk of Ephesians 2, 8 through 10. 2, 8, and 9, and then 10.
Next
And
week,
it might kind of fall into place of what we're doing today.
what next Bible said? Is that what
Next Sunday during, and I'm sure we're gonna have a fellowship time, extended fellowship time, maybe after the kids do their, I've seen the service, it's gonna be cool.
Oh.
I can't wait,
What did you say y'all are gonna do? I don't know if I'll be in this one or not, but.
Ephesians 2, 8 through
Verses 8.
10, but we'll do 8 and 9 first, and then we'll do 10.
Well, that makes sense.
Of course, you'll go ahead, well, yeah.
Which you're not gonna do.
But you're gonna go ahead and read the whole thing anyway, so you know where it's going to go, but, is grace, is our concept of grace controversial?
It definitely is.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, it definitely
Well,
is.
then we'll have a good discussion. All right, jealous, circle it. Now, if I just don't throw that away, we'll be good.
By the way, the Jewish Bible translates it as impassioned.
Impassioned,
Yeah, which is interesting.
I like that.
Yeah,
Because, I mean, God is impassioned with us.
Yeah, because I didn't see that connotation in the Jewish word that's used in that passage, so it was
Yeah.
interesting that they translated.
Yeah, I am gonna look that up.
I mean, I came up with my definition for jealousy based on how some controlling, I've had a controlling way, it goes way back, where, well, I love you more than ever, so that's why I'm jealous, like, it's the false notion of, whereas God, it is a true notion of, I care, these things do not care in return, I do.
Mhm.
But
Right.
then romantic partners who go, well, and I'm not saying this is you, but I've been in an emotionally, mentally abusive relationship. It was way back, it was
Okay.
in high school. And it was not the form of abuse I was prepared for. I was prepared for physical abuse, I was just not prepared for
Right.
emotional
Right.
and mental abuse.
Which
And
is probably so much worse.
it's so much worse.
Well, I know
It
it is.
still rears its ugly head every once in a while. I'm much more secure. I mean, yeah, our early years with Harold, it took a long time for me to
Okay.
like gain that just because of
Sure.
what I had lived through. So it would always be, well, I'm jealous because I care more about you than they do. Like, it was definitely a negative connotation. Whereas
Yeah.
God, it truly is that golden calf you just made. It's not gonna love you, it's
It's-
not going to guide you, it's not going to insert whatever here. So to me, God is the only being that can truly use jealous in a positive connotation. I don't know that any human can, because we are born with our innate human nature. We are not God.
Yeah.
So that's where that's how I was like, now I could see it. I was like, before I never saw the jealous part. I was like, that doesn't make any sense. But now, when you're like, could it be positive? I'm like, yeah, got the wheels turning. And fortunately, they turned here and now instead of, a week from now.
All right, I am done. It's physically done. So, have a great week. I hope we won't get too much snow.
Thank you.
And we'll continue the
My
discussion next
kids,
week.
they wanna be out of
Invite
school.
someone to come join us.
They're like, we're in the snow, we're gonna be out of school.
Yeah. Because it's gonna stay cold enough, it won't melt.
Yeah, mine.
All this snow.
Where are you from, Maureen?
Yeah, I'm born in Tennessee, but when you live up there, you have everything to take care of. The roads are cleared off.
Oh, really?
Snow back here. Yeah, they're prepared for it. It's like, okay,